With the release of Obsession and Backrooms, it feels like horror is booming right now, and quickly becoming one of the industry's most profitable genres. 2026 is appearing to be one of the most successful years for the genre, with the release of some of the biggest horror films, with actresses like Indy Navarrete even being pegged for an Oscar. So why is horror better than ever right now? Well, let's explore. As superhero films have become less dominant at the box office, horror has quietly emerged as one of Hollywood's most reliable genres. Unlike Marvel, horror doesn't need a large budget. That means studios are willing to gamble on original ideas because the financial risk is significantly lower. As seen by movies such as Obsession, which was made for under $1 million, studios can have big hits with low-budget movies. Internet horror specifically left its mark this year, with Backrooms dominating. Kane Parsons' film was inspired by the Backrooms creepypasta and follows a furniture shop owner and his therapist who discover a dimension of endless liminal spaces. Up until this point, the only other movies inspired by creepypastas were Slender Man and perhaps The Russian Sleep Experiment, neither of which performed very well, which is a damn shame because I would love a very good Slender Man movie. Backrooms is ultimately the breakthrough, hopefully allowing for more internet-born adaptations. It is worth noting that 10 years ago, Hollywood would have laughed at the idea of adapting internet horror. Today, one of the biggest horror releases of the year comes directly from YouTube. Director Kane Parsons was a teenager making horror films on the platform before going on to direct this smash hit. This alone is incredibly impressive and almost unheard of. It speaks volumes about where horror is heading, in my opinion. Some of the genre's biggest creative voices are no longer coming through Hollywood. They're coming from YouTube, which is incredible. It seems now in 2026 that horror is just continuing to invent itself with films such as Obsession, X8, and Leviticus. All of these horrors are drastically different, which is why horror continues to survive. Obsession, a favourite of mine this year, was perhaps one of the most unique watching experiences I've had in a very, very long time. Obsession follows Bear, who is in love with his co-worker Nikki. Bear is absolutely terrified of confessing his feelings for her, scared of being friend-zoned, so he makes a wish on a stick for her to love him more than anything else in the world. And guess what? He gets that wish. What ensues is a disturbing faux love story played out as we see Nikki possessed by the wish and quite literally putting herself through hell in order to fulfill it. Whether it be hurting herself standing motionless in place for hours on end while Bear is away, or taking the lives of people who could potentially get in the way of her love for him, which I should specify again comes directly from the wish. It's not real. This film disturbed me due to the simple fact that Nikki could not consent to any of this and was forced to watch on as a third party as her body was possessed, with her having no means to escape. What is refreshing about this film is there is a deeper message lying within it. It doesn't exist just to scare you, but more to question the things that are taking place. And despite us only existing in Bear's perspective, it doesn't mean he's the one we should be rooting for. The monster isn't Nikki, it never was. It's the man who was too afraid to confess his feelings and ultimately took away the woman's right to choose. The film is unlike anything I've watched before. A simple story but incredibly original in its execution. And this is exactly why horror is thriving right now. No major studio would greenlight a romantic comedy where the love interest is possessed by a wish and stripped of her free will. Horror can tell stories no other genre would even attempt. Leviticus is yet another prime example of original horror. The Australian coming-of-age story is a romantic supernatural horror, typically genres that don't usually blend, although despite that is Obsession as well. The film follows two teenagers who become tormented by a supernatural entity, summoned by their religious community. The entity takes on the form of the person you desire the most, and for the teenagers, it's each other. Not only is it a romantic horror, but it's also a queer love story, making it one of the most ambitious horror projects. It's haunting and innovative and takes an eerie look at homophobia and repression. Like Obsession, there is far more than meets the eye with this film. Leviticus proves another reason horror is flourishing. It's not just experimenting with monsters, it's experimenting with storytelling itself, blending queer romance, religious trauma, and supernatural horror into something genuinely fresh. What horror audiences are seeking is changing massively, and the shift has happened due to Gen Z. I think anyway. They're not looking for cheap thrills or mindless slashers. They want ambiguity and slow dread that lingers with you long after the movie finishes. Here's the thing, Gen Z were brought up on analog horror, creepypastas, YouTube, and even a strange fascination for liminal spaces, which I don't quite understand, but they seem to love it. Their tastes are far different from the horror of the last few decades. Instead of chasing jump scares, they want atmosphere. This year has also shown us that sequels are also improving. In the past, sequels would often exist just as money earners, and audiences will watch because they love the franchise. However, recent horror sequels have proven that they can be successful while also being just as strong as their predecessors. And this is because horror sequels have finally realized audiences don't just want more of the same, they want the story to feel fresh. Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, and 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple are both prime examples of this. In both instances, the films are trying to expand the world instead of trying to repeat what has already been done. I will say, going into Ready or Not 2, I was hesitant as soon as she was forced to have to play the game again, but you quickly realise this is not going to follow the same formula as the first movie. And the addition of Sarah Michelle Gellar, Sean Hattersley, and Elijah Wood were excellent. It delved deeper into the devil worshipping, and the stakes were far higher, making the first movie seem almost like a walk in the park. I mean, when I was watching it, I was thinking, God, I would much prefer to be in the mansion from the first one and playing the simple game of hide and seek, because this is far more intense, and Sean Hattersley scared the crap out of me. Horror franchises have realised audiences aren't seeking repetition anymore, they're asking for evolution. This year has shown us that horror is more experimental than ever, something that you don't quite see in other genres. The fact that a film was produced about infinite yellow corridors, a wishing stick, and even Exit 8, which is essentially an endlessly looping Japanese underpass, which I will say, I did play the game, and I don't know what happened, it must have glitched, but I somehow completed it within mere seconds. I think my game was broken. Horror embraces the weird, and this is one of the reasons we love it so much. Horror is usually a divided genre, particularly amongst critics. However, this year has shown horror is better than ever, with many horror releases scoring highly with both critics and audiences, which is typically unusual for the genre. Not just that, but the genre as a whole has become more respected. A few decades ago, the idea of a horror film winning an Oscar was near impossible. Now people take horror much more seriously, particularly due to the likes of Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, and even Mike Flanagan. Horror directors have become some of the biggest creative names in the industry. It's not simply that horror has become more embraced or that stories are changing, it has also reached a new peak due to social media. Backrooms blew up because of TikTok, YouTube, and even Reddit. People love to theorize on the internet, share their interpretations, and even clips from the movie. That is what is unique about the horror genre. It's incredibly shareable. One creepy image or video can go viral overnight. Very few genres benefit from that. It also allows horror to be extended. It continues on the internet long after the movie is finished. Like Marvel once was, horror has become event cinema. People typically want to watch it together to experience the screams, the laughs, the tension, even the absurdity in a packed movie theatre, rather than watching it alone. That is yet another reason why horror survives streaming better than many other genres. It's a shared experience. Perhaps horror isn't better because the monsters are scarier. I think it is better because filmmakers have stopped being afraid to experiment, to be weird and unique. Whether it is internet creepypastas, queer romance, or liminal spaces, horror has become the genre where creativity can thrive. I think that's why 2026 feels special. It isn't just a great year for horror, it may very well be the beginning of horror's next golden age.